There she is in her ear. Woo! CaitlinClark's getting hot on the bench. Tired of you screaming in my ear. Tired of you nagging. Tired of you whining all the damn time. I'm sick of it.
Body language never lies. And that moment right there said everything. CaitlinClark sitting on the bench, visibly frustrated, going back and forth with a veteran teammate on her own squad. That wasn't just a random emotional reaction in the heat of the game. That was weeks of tension, confusion, and built-up frustration finally starting to spill into public view. People can try to dismiss it, but the cameras caught exactly what the Indiana Fever didn't want fans noticing. And tonight, we're diving deep into what that moment really says about the Indiana Fever, the leadership of StephanieWhite, and the pressure surrounding the biggest superstar women's basketball has ever seen. Because when your franchise player looks that animated on the sideline, especially someone carrying the expectations, ratings, ticket sales, and attention that CaitlinClark brings, it's usually a sign that something much bigger is happening behind the scenes.
CaitlinClark's tired of the handcuffs you guys put on her. CaitlinClark's tired of carrying this team, carrying this offense, and all you guys do is nitpick and nag. 2 + 2 = 4, and then you guys come right behind her and say, no, 2 + 2 = 5. 2 + 2 = 4, ladies. 2 + 2.
That handcuffs reference really captures the entire situation in a single word. Music. Throughout this season, the discussion around the Indiana Fever has kept circling back to one central question. Are they genuinely allowing their generational talent to play her natural style of basketball, or are they forcing a once-in-a-lifetime player into a system that simply doesn't match her strengths? Because when you look closely at the on-court patterns, the signs increasingly point toward the second option. The structure looks restrictive, almost like it's limiting creativity instead of unlocking it. And for CaitlinClark, that kind of constraint doesn't just show up randomly in one possession or one game, it builds over time. So the frustration we just saw isn't coming out of nowhere or a single isolated moment. It feels like something that has been stacking up gradually over the course of the season. Possession after possession, decision after decision.
If anything and everything CaitlinClark does, can't give her any type of credit to the StephanieWhite way. Even Greg Popovich gave Tim Duncan credit. Even Bill Belichick would give Tom Brady credit. Even Steve Kerr would give Steph Curry credit, but leave it to good old Methany White. She just can't give CaitlinClark credit. CaitlinClark might be waking up and...
That comparison cuts deep for a reason, especially the Belichick-Brady reference. Those partnerships didn't succeed because the coach tried to micromanage the franchise player into something he wasn't. They worked because the coach recognized the player as the engine, and the system existed to amplify what that player already did better than anyone else. In the same way, Tom Brady and Bill Belichick thrived when roles were clearly defined and the strengths of the quarterback were fully trusted within the structure. And you see a similar principle in basketball with Steve Kerr and Stephen Curry. Kerr didn't try to slow down Curry or force him into a more traditional, controlled system just because of concerns about pace or shot selection. Instead, he built the entire offense around how Curry naturally reads the floor, moves without the ball, and reshapes defenses simply by existing on it. That's why the comparison resonates so strongly here. It highlights the difference between a system that restricts a generational talent and one that fully leans into what makes them unstoppable in the first place.
This is how she is on the bench, then I might actually now be convinced that behind the scenes and at practices, it's worse. If this is how she is on the bench, I'm convinced that at practice, this isn't the first time she told them to chill. This isn't the first time she told them, you guys understand that I see the game on a different level than you, right? You guys understand I am thinking more steps ahead than you are, right? Look at this. Get out of my ear, man. Get out of my ear. Get out of my ear!
Now, think about what we're actually seeing here. This is a public moment. Cameras are rolling. Microphones are active. The entire arena is watching. And yet CaitlinClark is still letting that frustration show in real time. If this is what comes through when she knows the entire league and media spotlight is on her, it naturally raises a bigger question. What does that indicate about the environment when the lights are off? Practice settings, film sessions, locker room conversations before and after games, those are all spaces the public doesn't see. The behavior we're witnessing in front of 15,000 fans is often only a controlled version of what exists internally in any high-pressure team environment. And when emotions start spilling over publicly, it can suggest that the internal pressure has already been building for some time within the Indiana Fever structure. That doesn't automatically prove anything about what's happening behind closed doors, but it does point to a common reality in competitive sports. Players usually filter themselves in public, not the other way around. So when that filter starts to slip on camera, it can be a sign that frustration has been accumulating rather than appearing in isolation. Keep that detail in mind. It becomes important as the bigger picture starts to unfold.
How about you go right there?
Yeah, go right there.
Go right there.
Get out of here.
I'm tired of back and forth. Every time Caitlin says A, you say B. How about you? Yeah, Caitlin, let's try A. For God's sake, I've never seen you agree with CaitlinClark on camera.
Never.
Holy, like, God damn, Steph. Like, give us.
It pains you. It pains you to agree with her on camera. It pains with you to agree with her on camera. Cece still shaking her head after the timeout. Look, timeout looking at StephanieWhite, shaking her head.
And this is where it becomes difficult to dismiss as just a single isolated moment. Same game, same coaching staff, different flashpoint. CaitlinClark is now visibly shaking her head at StephanieWhite during a timeout, and then continuing that reaction even after play resumes. So when you break down the sequence, a clearer pattern starts to form. First, there's benchside frustration directed toward a veteran teammate. Then there's visible disagreement with the head coach during a dead ball situation. After that, the body language continues even as the game restarts. These aren't random, disconnected clips pulled from different nights across a long season. They're multiple separate reactions occurring within the same competitive context, under the same pressure, in real time. And that's what makes it more notable. The most high-profile player in the Indiana Fever setup showing open disagreement with coaching decisions on camera, in front of a full arena, while the game is still unfolding. Situations like that don't usually appear without some level of underlying build-up or ongoing tension within the competitive environment.
505 people show up yesterday. That means they didn't sell 3,000 tickets. There was probably 5,000 empty seats. They're gonna hear us one way or another. They're gonna hear us one way or another. CaitlinClark having some fun with it yesterday. You know she loves her stud buds. But let's take a look over here. Let's take a look at this.
All right, y'all. Good work.
All right, y'all.
And this is where the business reality enters the conversation. The Indiana Fever drew 14,055 fans for that game, in an arena that seats over 17,000. That gap is not insignificant. It represents thousands of unused tickets and a visibly less than full building on a night featuring CaitlinClark at home. When you zoom out, that context matters even more. This is a franchise that has heavily leaned into Clark as its central marketing force, given her unprecedented impact on attention, ratings, and ticket demand across women's basketball. So when there are still thousands of empty seats in that environment, it naturally becomes part of the broader conversation around fan engagement and expectations. In practical terms, empty seats are one of the clearest signals in sports business. They don't rely on narratives, social media reactions, or post-game framing. They show up directly in attendance figures and revenue. And in a situation where expectations are extremely high, those gaps can quickly become part of how people interpret both on-court performance and overall team direction.
Get it done, right? It wasn't pretty.
Because of you.
But we found a way. We came out with it.
Because of CC.
When we needed to. We had a 71% assist rate, really good.
Thanks, Caitlin.
Okay, really good. 50 to 30 points in the paint. Okay, that's
Thanks,
good
CC.
stuff. Out-rebounded him 38 to 24. Again, good stuff.
Good job, Big Swole and Sophie.
Free throw percentage, 100%.
Good job, Caitlin.
So we did enough things to get the win. We know we got to be better.
You
we
got
to be more consistent.
You got to be better, StephanieWhite. You got to be better. You got to be more consistent. Your coaching staff has to be better. Your coaching staff has to be more consistent. Let CaitlinClark play ball.
Listen to that post-game press conference again, because this is where a pattern starts to feel impossible to ignore. StephanieWhite goes out of her way to highlight the assist rate. She emphasizes points in the paint. She talks about the rebounding margin. She singles out players like Sophie and the Bigs, and keeps crediting the collective effort. But the one element she consistently circles around, almost carefully avoiding direct emphasis, is the performance of the player who made all those numbers possible in the first place. CaitlinClark just extended her own WNBA record for games with at least 20 points and 10 assists. That's not a new achievement in isolation. It's a continuation of a record she already owns and keeps building on. Yet in the post-game presser, the head coach doesn't lead with it. It isn't the headline. It isn't the focal point. It's mentioned briefly, folded into a broader comment about needing more consistency, then quickly moved past. Now imagine the contrast. If Greg Popovich were coaching Tim Duncan after a triple-double performance, the idea that he would bury that accomplishment under a generic call for more consistency feels unthinkable. That's not how elite coach-player relationships function when both sides understand the scale of what they're building around. Generational talent isn't treated as a footnote. It's the foundation of the conversation. This is what fans have been reacting to for months. It shows up in comments, in reactions, in post-game discourse regardless of whether the team wins or loses. The message people keep taking away is consistent. The franchise player is being managed like a problem to control rather than a core strength to maximize. And when that framing is repeated often enough, it doesn't stay limited to media narratives. It seeps into the environment, into teammates, into expectations, into body language. Coaches who have worked with transcendent players tend to describe the same principle. You don't constrain them, you unlock them. You don't override their instincts, you build around them. The system exists to support the player, not suppress what makes them unique. The most successful coach-superstar partnerships in sports history aren't defined by rigid structure, they're defined by trust. Visible trust. Public trust. The kind of trust that shows up in how a coach speaks about a player books from college to the professional level. You're driving unprecedented attention and viewership, and your impact on the league is measurable both statistically and economically. Then you listen to a post-game message where your performance is not the centerpiece, but something secondary, folded into a broader discussion about collective improvement and consistency. That doesn't land as motivation. Over time, it starts to feel like erosion. A slow shift in how value is acknowledged and prioritized. From a front office perspective, this becomes even more sensitive. Clark is on a rookie-scale contract, and that reality creates a timeline. When that contract window closes, the range of possibilities expands. New markets, new systems, new coaching environments that might structure everything around her instead of constantly calibrating around her. The longer the current dynamic feels unresolved, the more those alternatives naturally grow in appeal. Not necessarily because of a desire to leave, but because staying has to feel equally justified. And that's where the concern grows. Fans see it. Media narratives pick up on it. Even empty seats become part of the interpretation. The question stops being about talent and starts becoming about fit, communication, and direction. Because patience is not infinite, not even for franchise-defining players. Especially when praise feels inconsistent and criticism feels constant, game after game. There's also a broader media effect at play. Coaches shape narratives more than people realize. When a coach consistently highlights role players while downplaying star performances, that framing doesn't stay internal. Beat writers adopt it. Broadcast narratives reflect it. Headlines shift from individual brilliance to vague team-wide shortcomings. So instead of Clark delivers another historic 20-10 performance, the story becomes teams still searching for consistency. And that shift in framing begins at the podium. At that point, the real question for Indiana isn't about X's and O's. It's about alignment. Whether this is the right coaching structure for this player, at this moment, in this market, under this level of attention. Because the signals aren't just showing up in interviews anymore. They're showing up in reactions, in sideline behavior, in fan response, and in the atmosphere around the team. Mark this moment, because it may be referenced later as a turning point, when conversations began shifting toward long-term fit rather than short-term performance. The records are there. The footage is there. The pattern is there. It doesn't require interpretation, only observation. So the question becomes simple, even if the answer isn't. Is this a coaching structure that needs adjustment around a generational player? Or is this a situation where the player will eventually outgrow the environment regardless of adjustments? Both ideas can't define the same future. Pick the interpretation.